Hello and welcome to the Legend of Nobunaga. There's only one battle left in Chapter 11, one normal battle anyway, and we're going to be facing it today. It's the Battle of Anotsu. This is the battle in which we regain two key officers, Hideyoshi Hashiba and Koruku, his bandit friend. We're facing off against Terumoto Mori and Fujinaga Ishiki, forces of the Mori clan and representatives of the Shogunate armies, respectively. And we're going to have to defeat them both simultaneously on one battlefield.
Alright, we have our goal. We shall be moving soon. Sir!
This is an easier stage than last week, but I managed to make it look fairly difficult through some not perfect gameplay. I definitely would have done this stage differently, playing it a second time. Let's see what's going on.
Lord! Lord Nobunaga! You're alive! You're still alive! I'm so happy! I'm so
Intense
happy!
bromance.
I'm so happy!
This is disgusting.
I'm a little jealous.
Aren't we all, Amalia? So now, in a completely unrelated scene, Hideyoshi is relieving himself.
It was but a short dream. I know that. There's no reason for ambition anymore. Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
That depends on the ambition, don't you think?
Oh, Amalia! Stop it! This isn't the time!
I was worried.
Huh?
Hideyoshi, I have grown to love you in your carefree life.
Forgive me! I thank you for the thought! Yes! Yeah! It has nothing to do with like or dislike! I already have someone I really like!
He needs to loosen up a little bit.
Sounds like the monkey.
You're right.
So poor Hideyoshi rejoins our forces and is immediately raped by Amalia. Not very nice of her, but I guess we're not going to stop her. And Hideyoshi is very happy to be reunited with Nobunaga. We also get a new officer, Kanbei Kuroda, who I mentioned before. Maybe I'll use him later on. I didn't get a look at him at this stage.
What say our scouts? According to the scouts, this is what we face.
So it's time to check out this week's stage. Let's see what the game has in store for us.
We shall win if we defeat the enemy commander Fujinaga Ishiki. We will lose if this camp is destroyed. Ishiki is positioned in this area. We have heard that the Mori army is approaching. We must finish before they arrive.
So we have Fujinaga on one side and the Mori on the other. It's a two-sided battle.
With Lord Nobunaga at my side, Mori will not stand a chance!
My lord, it is time to deploy.
Hideyoshi was historically the conqueror of Mori, so he has reason to be confident about his abilities against the Mori forces. So it's time for me to select my army. You're forced to take Hideyoshi for this stage, which actually turns out to be a little bit of a problem for me. The basic reason being that I don't have any spare high-level cavalry units to give him, so I just have to give him the best unit I can find, and it ends up not being very good, unfortunately. And we'll see in the stage that he's going to take quite a beating for having very low defense stats, which the unit I give him happens to have. On the east side, I throw down some of my elite units in order to make sure I have something powerful. I decided even before the battle started that I was going to split my command groups up into little subgroups. So that meant I didn't have to put units that complemented each other down. I could basically split up these little units I'm creating to cover multiple angles of attack at once, which I guess would be a good idea, figuring that the enemy would just charge straight from my camp. And to a certain extent, it's going to be successful, but we'll see. The tips tell me to find this secret village, which is actually right next to the start point, and to sneak around the Mori cannons.
Impressive! Victory is as good as ours!
And we'll find an easy way to do that as we go along.
All right, let's move out. Remember, we fight for the land and for peace. Sir!
Right, so let's get in there. I'm still going to be telling a little bit of the historical story as well.
Now is our chance to finish them! Charge them!
Of course, levels like these don't really correspond to anything historically. This is just thrown in to fit with the game's logic. You can see me here splitting up my formations, creating new units, which allow me to spread my formation a little bit. Unfortunately, I had so many units it was actually hard for me to coordinate them all, so I ended up wasting quite a lot of time as a result. So I guess I discovered the downside of making your army too independently coordinated. But anyway, last week when I was talking about the story, the historical story, I skipped over about 6 years of it. I skipped from the part where Hideyoshi wins the war from succession, up to 6 years later, where he defeats the Hojo clan in the siege of Odawara Castle. And I talked about last time how he went from ruling just the remnants of the Oda domain to being in command of the armies of all the great clans simultaneously in this 6-year period. So it definitely leaves room for me to tell you how exactly Hideyoshi manages this all on his own to become the effective dictator of Japan, ruling over all the other great clans who up to now have been opposing Oda vehemently like the entire time and have no particular reason to do what he says. Well, his trump card is going to turn out to be something a little bit unexpected actually. It's going to come in the shape of a couple of pieces of really good luck that Hideyoshi has right after finishing his war for succession. This was back in 1584. He's just emerged as the ruler of the Oda clan, with Samboshi, his puppet ruler, technically ruling the clan but having no power. And Hideyoshi basically gets a pretty lucky break because the imperial court of the Emperor of Japan, who technically had ultimate power over all of the clans, although this power wasn't very well respected, this imperial court decides to award him various titles over the next couple of years. The first one he gets, I believe, is Naidaijin, which is the 3rd highest rank you can have in the Japanese imperial court system, and this gives him a lot of legitimacy to command armies on the behalf of the emperor, which means suddenly things that his armies do are kind of official. He's not doing it for his own ambition, he's doing it for the good of the nation all of a sudden. And this gives him a massive boost on any future campaigns he's going to want to go on. But this isn't the good luck that really sets him up at this point in history. The good luck, or I guess the good diplomacy by him, is that Hideyoshi manages to secure the allegiance of 2 of Oda's great enemies, the Mori, who we're seeing on the field here today, and the Uesugi clan. Both these great clans submit to Hideyoshi's rule of Oda, and this basically means he suddenly controls an absolutely massive amount of territory, or at least the Oda sphere of influence moves over a large area of territory. It would have been the greater part of Honshu, Japan's main island, and even little bits of Kyushu, one of the southern islands, and Shikoku, the island in between. Basically, he controlled, say, 2/3 of Japan's total land mass all of a sudden, despite the Oda clan only controlling about 1/3. So the surrendering of Mori and Uesugi to him was extremely useful. The reason behind it happened over time through diplomacy that Hideyoshi was doing during the War for Succession era, and I guess they must have seen once he won the War for Succession that he was on the up and his side was the one to be on, and so they sided with him for that reason and started doing what he said, especially once he had imperial justification. You can see here in the game I accidentally let a unit pass because I was too busy focusing on other things, so a unit almost breaks into my main camp, which would have caused me to lose the stage, but I managed to notice it in time and send some reinforcements to take them out. Meanwhile, my forces on the western side are taking a beating because their defense stats are very low, particularly for Hideyoshi, as I said, which means every time he gets attacked he loses a surprising amount of troops, and there's no real way for me to get them back. So both Hideyoshi, Takatora and Katsuie are having a really hard time fighting against the Ishiki army on the west side, and it's only going to get harder from from now on as they start advancing towards the enemy's more powerful units. So I had to be a little bit careful with these guys. Here you can see me finding the note which is going to reveal the secret of this map.
We support Lord Nobunaga and his world. We want to help.
So it reveals the existence of various boats which you can use to circumvent Mori's cannonades, which are firing down at an area, moving up to their main camp. I'm going to be using this a little bit later with Nobunaga. I place him in front of the boats ready to move and then sort of forget about him for a while. So my actual attack on the Mori camp is very delayed, which is a very, very bad idea because I'm going to end up going into the camp just as the Mori army arrives, and this is going to put Nobunaga in big trouble because he basically gets ambushed. We'll see this happening in just a few minutes time. So for now, what was I saying in the story? Hideyoshi now ruled a massive amount of the Japanese mainland, and he had this imperial title of Naidaijin, and this basically meant he was as close to being dictator as he ever was, but he wanted more, and you could see his thirst for conquest emerge in his diplomacy with one of the last remaining clans that was independent from his own, the Chosokabe clan. The Chosokabe ruled Shikoku Island, the center of Japan's 3 main islands, and the smallest of all of them, with just 4 provinces on them, all of which were ruled by Chosokabe at the time. And Hideyoshi had a little bit of a reason to be annoyed with them, because the Chosokabe clan had been supporting the Mori forces during the Oda-Mori War, which Hideyoshi was in charge of. So using that, and using his new justification in the imperial court to have some sort of hegemony over Japan, he basically demands of the Chosokabe that they surrender 2 of their 4 provinces to Oda, and then agree from then on that their clan will be subservient to the Oda clan. Chosokabe comes back with a counteroffer. He'll accept the terms, but he only wants to surrender 1 province. And Hideyoshi has a very interesting response to this. Within days, he has invaded Shikoku Island with an enormous army from the east, and he's commanded the Mori forces, now accepting his orders, to invade them from the north. 1 month later, he has taken 3 of Chosokabe's provinces into his control. So Chosokabe's attempt to bargain down the deal basically caused Hideyoshi to just bargain up the deal by force. At this stage, Chosokabe realized he was messing with the wrong guy and surrendered. Nobunaga now is going to go in the boats, and we get a fun cutscene with a friendly man telling us to come on, hop in.
Please, get in my boat. I will take you around behind the enemy's camp.
Don't get in strangers' boats, kids. So it teleports me up behind the enemy cannons, and basically allows me to start destroying them, which will clear my route between the center and the Mori camp, although I'm not going to use that route, basically because I forget. As I said, this is a very negligent playthrough of this level, for which I can only apologise. I didn't feel like doing it again because I'm still going to get the top score, which means there was no direct advantage to doing it again. But anyway, I was just about to say that Hideyoshi's treatment of Chosokabe was somewhat revolutionary for the Oda clan. Normally, when the Oda clan defeated an enemy clan, they would completely destroy them, kill or force to commit suicide the great number of the clan's main retainers and family members, and completely occupy all of its lands and start taxing them for itself. But Hideyoshi, when it came to the Chosokabe clan, decided to let them live. He let them keep their remaining 1 province in the south side of Shikoku Island, and he allowed the ruler to keep his head and keep his power. Now this was a very much a turnaround from what Nobunaga had been doing, where he would just kill everyone, and it kind of could be interpreted in 2 ways in my opinion. You could either say that Hideyoshi was kind of more nice, that he wasn't as ruthless as Nobunaga, that his desire for conquest wasn't quite so much based on the desire for like domination over individuals, and more just about unifying territory under a single name. But you could also look at it from a social political point of view, in that Hideyoshi must realize he's approaching the end game of the Sengoku Jidai, that unification of the land is imminent, and this means military power is going to start becoming less important for the clans, and political power is going to become the thing that decides whether the clan survives or whether it is destroyed. So he knows he needs to create political allies for himself across Japan, and taking members of the great families like the Chosokabe and showing them clemency as he does in this situation is going to be cause for him to gain future favors from them, basically. So he could have been sparing the life of Chosokabe and many of the other people he decides not to kill whilst pacifying Japan. Could have been simply to gain new allies. Although you could actually argue against that, because slightly later on, no, slightly before this, sorry, he has to deal with some religious uprisings, just like Nobunaga did at many points during his career. This uprising is from the Nagoro region, which I assume is where the Nagoro Rifles unit in this game comes from. If you've ever played this game, you might notice that Nagoro Rifles are the most common unit in the game for you to be given as rewards for battles, especially the minor battles. I've probably had about 10 incarnations of the Nagoro Rifles, and I always have to just sell them off because I'm never going to use them. But yes, Nagoro is also a big religious center in Japan, and they have this Buddhist monk uprising, not too dissimilar to the ones Nobunaga had to keep facing. But Hideyoshi both has more military success against them, in that his suppression of them goes very well, whereas Nobunaga's tended to go quite poorly. But he also decides to show mercy. He does not kill all the members of the religious sect, he doesn't burn their fortresses to the ground or anything, which is what Nobunaga had got used to. In fact, once they surrendered to him, he goes on to rebuild 2 of the great fortresses which gave Nobunaga so much trouble, the fortresses at Mount Hiei and at Honganji.
Let's go out there and
2 places that Nobunaga spent a lot of time and effort destroying and killing many of the inhabitants, both civilians and soldiers, earning himself a nice ruthless reputation while he did it. So Hideyoshi completely turned this around and was being rather nice to them, perhaps also because he realised the end of the war was coming, that he needed to unify the country, not just under the sword but also in their own minds. They needed to respect his ruling party. After he secured Shikoku Island from the Chosokabe, this was when Hideyoshi's power truly began to flourish, because Hideyoshi was then awarded not the 2nd highest rank but the 1st highest rank in the Imperial Court, skipping a stage suddenly. The rank is called something like Kanpaku, I think. Kanpaku is basically equivalent to Regency. Oh, have a look at this. Nobunaga summoned a meteor from space to attack the enemy units. Very good of him. It was actually surprisingly underwhelming. I expected something more dramatic from summoning a meteor from space. It just kind of killed a few enemies and knocked them to the ground. It also has a silencing effect, stopping them using skills, which is the other bonus, but that wasn't so important in this case. We can see in the stage Nobunaga and Masanori have made good headway sneaking into the enemy camp, but the enemy's reinforcements are going to show up very, very shortly, and then they're going to be in trouble. Meanwhile, my task force on the west side is pretty much getting itself in position to destroy the Fujinaga main camp, and that will be the end of that part of the battle. But then the problem is those forces are then stranded over there and can't take part in the rest of the battle because it'll take them too long to get to where the action is. Now here we go, Katsuie is going in to engage now. I was just about to tell you what the Kanpaku was. The Kanpaku is a regency position. I'm sort of making an analogy to medieval style courts where they'd have regencies. You could sort of regard it as being the senior advisor who had a lot of power. Basically, they would rule in the empire, in the emperor's stead. They would have the same amount of power as the emperor himself, and in theory use it when the emperor couldn't. But because at the moment the emperor's power was very limited, this was all the time. Fujinaga now starts pulling some magic out on me. There was a lot of ninjitsu coming out in this stage. It's lightning this time absolutely destroying my cavalry. I use a lot of troops to this lightning attack. Very effective. And it gives me this defense down bonus, which is not too bad, but just adds insult to injury, really. Here he is.
Nobunaga! You will pay for what you did to his lordship with your life.
Fair enough. Unfortunately for Fujinaga, he only has archers, which are very weak units and are quite easily defeated by melee units, so I'm not going to have too much trouble with him. So yes, Hideyoshi has just been made the regent of Japan, and this basically cements him as the ruler. He is basically the emperor of Japan. he has the most powerful position in the Imperial Court. It looks like Teramoto is about to show up. Here he is.
Nobunaga, today's breath shall be your last.
So this is when the Mori main force suddenly appears on the field, right where Nobunaga was standing, in fact. And this is going to cause some massive trouble for Nobunaga and Masanori over on the east side of the map. I realised that the enemy wasn't going to attack my main camp anymore. I've been leaving those forces behind, just in case enemy ambush forces suddenly came at my main camp to force me to lose. But this turned out to be a waste of time, so that was another thing I would change if I did the battle again. I wouldn't have committed so much of my force to staying there, and would have moved Toshie up to help Nobunaga much sooner.
Finish them!
Anyway, that's pretty much the end of what I wanted to talk about story-wise today. Hideyoshi has become the regent of Japan. He now has full legitimacy to rule the nation.
Regroup, so that I may fight again for my lord.
And there goes Fujinaga. His hegemony is now unquestionable. Japan is his for all intents and purposes, and now he can start forming his own clan, the Toyotomi clan, which will almost completely unify Japan and bring it into an era of peace. Almost. Tokugawa is going to throw a spanner in the works later on, as we'll see. Here in the stage, one of the enemies uses the damn water wave attack. My most hated skill. Seems to be the only thing the enemy ever uses on me, and it's completely devastating. It destroys Masanori's unit. He loses basically all of his troops as a result of both the attacks and the breaking in formation it causes, which makes him very vulnerable to additional attacks from the enemy's cavalry, which are in amongst my ranks. Masanori came very close to dying, and I had to pull him out completely to stop him perishing and thus being wounded in the next stage. And this was bad news for Nobunaga, because now Nobunaga is on his own, facing the enemy commander and 2 support units on his own. So Nobunaga is basically in rather a lot of trouble, and I'm going to have to struggle with him to keep him alive. Masanori goes and sits in the corner in order to prevent himself dying, just like Hideyoshi had gone and sat back at my main camp to prevent himself dying. Sorry. I decided to try out this whirlwind skill once I found it for Toshie. I believe I had actually seen this one before, because Nagamasa Azai used it on the back in the Battle of Anagawa, chapter 5 I think that was. It looks pretty damn devastating, sucking up those katana infantry with ease. Now Nobunaga's facing punishment for racing ahead and trying to destroy the enemy camp before their main force arrive. He's taking arrows from off screen, which I can't even see because the camera angle's messed up. And it's a little bit of time until I work out how to change the camera angle. There we go, I'm starting to do it. Oh, maybe not. Simultaneously he's being beaten on 2 sides by cavalry and spearmen, barely getting a chance to get a single attack in the whole time. I really need to break through somehow. But every time I try and get my cavalry charge ready to break through, some arrows come down and stagger him. The enemy cavalry charges me, but fortunately I'm able to cancel it with a block, which seems to be a little bit hit and miss whether you can do that or not. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, so that was pretty lucky. Luckily Nobunaga's attack values are so high that the 1 or 2 hits he's getting in every now and again actually do heavy damage to the enemy. And now he's broken through and is able to take a little bit of revenge on these bow units. All I really need to do is defeat Teramoto, but Teramoto dodges my cavalry charge and Motoharu takes it instead. But that's not going to be any help to Teramoto, because he charges right in foolishly and is immediately defeated.
Fall back. The Mori line must continue.
I imagine we'll be seeing him again sometime.
The enemy has been routed. Prepare for the celebration.
So there we go, the stage was completed. As I said, not a completely satisfactory completion of that stage, in my opinion, but it was good enough. We'll see I left 2 enemy officers unkilled, which is a shame. Always like to defeat all of my enemies. But I managed to get a solid score and rank S, so I'm going to get all the prizes. So that's pretty much good. The only disadvantage for not having a very good performance is you get less experience, and I don't think I'm going to get very many levels up after the battle as a result. I get a cool weapon for Amalia as a prize, Durandal. This worm armor, which is a green repainting of the Wind Cloud armor, which looks pretty good. The Book of Sorcery, not interested in that, some very boring skills. And Lance Spears, seems like a little bit of a tautology. Couple of levels up, but nothing significant. Most characters didn't really get anything. Even the low-level characters like Hideyoshi didn't level up, which is a bit of a shame. Tons of skill levels up. Wishing past there though. That was pretty good. So let's see what happens after the battle.
A grand victory, my lord! Yeah. By the way, I was wondering, is the Lady Oichi still doing well?
Hideyoshi and his crushes. Oichi is for some reason in Gifu instead of at Kitanasho with Katsuie, where she was historically.
How cute! Just like you, Lady Oichi.
Great line, Hideyoshi. Great line.
You know, I've been really wanting to see you.
Lord Hideyoshi.
Oh, forgive me, please! I don't know, I shouldn't have said that!
So awkward.
Thank you. Your presence has brightened my life. But I fear you are too bright for me.
Oh, Hideyoshi gets royally friend-zoned by Oichi right there. So he's gonna have to try and get over that.
Using Gifu as a base, the Oda forces began their counterattack. They merged the Shibata, Hashiba, and Tokugawa armies and destroyed the Shogunate's forces. Having gained the upper hand in the east, the Oda forces were in a position to challenge the Shogunate's main force in Kinai. Elsewhere, his lordship Yoshiaki had imprisoned Mitsuhide and solidified his control of the area. He gave full control of his armies to Teramoto Mori and Fujinaga Ishiki and prepared for the coming of Nobunaga.
So it seems that Mitsuhide has been imprisoned. So he's been usurped by Yoshiaki, even after usurping Nobunaga.
Let's plan our strategy.
Sir?
Now we have to counter-invade Yoshiaki's territory.
My lord, here's the situation.
Looks like we're heading west towards Kyoto to try and capture some of Yoshiaki's key holdings. Basically just recapturing the stuff we captured earlier in the game again, so a little bit repetitive. And we're actually fighting the same people, I guess, although now Mori are involved. That adds a little bit to the fun. Plus I guess we're not going to have Tatsuoki Saito constantly breathing down our necks the whole time, like we did in previous campaigns in the western areas. Anyway, so that'll be the final battle of Chapter 11 coming next week, the final battle of Kyoto against Ashikaga and Mori armies. In the meantime, I'll wish you a very good week. Thank you for watching The Legend of Nobunaga. You must forgive my poor gaming skills. I shall try much harder next time, honestly. It's basically because I filmed the last episode a couple of weeks ago, so I haven't played in a while. My skills got a little bit rusty. Hopefully next time it'll be better. So I hope you'll join me next time in The Legend of Nobunaga to retake Kyoto, possibly take some revenge on that Yoshiaki fellow, and see if Nobunaga can take steps to unifying the land, as he's been trying to do so for so many years, for the land and for peace. See you next time.